Good afternoon, everyone. I call this meeting to order. Welcome to the 57th meeting of the Standing Committee on Indigenous and Northern Affairs. We acknowledge that we meet on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe peoples.
Our meeting today will be taking place in a hybrid format, pursuant to the House of Commons order adopted Thursday, June 23rd, 2022. Members are participating both in the room and by Zoom. Proceedings will be posted to the House of Commons website. Please note that the web broadcast will show only the speaker rather than a zoomed-out view of the room as a whole.
I would like to outline a few rules to follow. You may speak in the official language of your choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting in French, English, and Inuktitut. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, Inuktitut, English, or French. Please select your language now. If interpretation is lost at any time, please inform me immediately, and we will ensure interpretation is properly restored before resuming the proceedings. For members participating in person, proceed as you usually would when the whole committee is meeting in person in a committee room. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you are on the video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Those in the room, your mic will be controlled as normal by the Proceedings and Verifications Officer. S'il vous plaît.
Please address all questions and comments through the chair.
When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. When you're not speaking, your mic should be on mute. With regard to a speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do the best we can to maintain consolidated order of speaking for all members, whether they are participating virtually or in person. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on November 21st, 2022, the committee is resuming its important study of improving graduation rates of Indigenous students. Today, in our first panel, we welcome Lois Philippe, former teacher and administrator in person. Thank you for joining us. David Rattray, former teacher by video conference. Helen Bobbywash, accountant, also by video conference. Thank you so much for giving us your time today. You'll each have 5 minutes for your opening remarks. And Ms. Phillip, you'll start us off. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm a little bit nervous. I've never done this before. It's nice to see a friendly face in the crowd. I'm from Fort Providence, and I've spent 20 years working in a school that I first attended from K to 8. When I attended, it was called Elizabeth Ward School, named after the first nun in the NWT to run a residential school. And at that time, it was still heavily influenced by the Catholic Church. So a lot of my education, K to 8, I was a federal day school student. This is very much a story with my community at the heart of all I do, and what we did to make it a community school and how we need to get back to that. Right now, our school is struggling because of the pandemic, because of the challenges that have emerged over the last 3 years. However, we all intuitively know that improving graduation rates for Indigenous students in both the K-12 system and at post-secondary levels would have tremendous benefits in terms of the socio-health indicators in Indigenous communities and on the overall GDP indicators in Canada to the tune of billions of dollars. Such a basic statement mired in 157 years of colonialism. How do we look at the challenges without understanding the conversations need to include the breadth of institutional policies that govern our communities? I'll occasionally look at my school photo for my grade 7-8 class and reflect on the 17-8 students that were in my class and the fact that only 4 of us graduated and the other 3 were non-Indigenous. And then I flash forward 40 years. 5 years ago, we had 23 post-secondary students in 11 different post-secondary institutions from Fort Providence, a community of 800. The cornerstone of this success was our extensive on-the-land programming, our Dene language immersion program, and alternative programming. One of the things that carries me through my days are the challenges I see and the solutions I seek. I've read a lot in the success of programs elsewhere that have piqued my curiosity. So with that mindset, when I moved into administration in 2004, I looked at what we could build upon to make it a better fit in the community. At that point, our students in grades 3, 6, and 9 wrote the Alberta Achievement Tests. And I had trouble mentally wrapping my head around a test that was characterized by failure. Why would I want students to write a test that they struggled with? Not that they were incapable of it, but rather they were not ready for it. Out of this, we began our Dene Jati immersion program, expanding from kindergarten to grade 3. One of the frustrations I carried as we began the immersion program was that there were loads of funds available if I had wanted to do a French language program, but had to beg, borrow, and steal to implement an Indigenous language program. Fort Providence is a site of the first residential school in the NWT. Our trauma is carried back to Confederation, 1867. Indigenous languages was integral to what we did and how we moved into, from this we moved into a year-round schooling calendar so that a robust land-based school program was created. And from this, there was buy-in from the community, increased levels of attendance. At the height of what we did, where we had our most success, our K-3 students began the semester, which ran from the Friday after the August long weekend until the Friday before the Thanksgiving weekend, outside in a camp by the river. Denijati was a language of instruction, and in the end, classes focused on the language around numeracy and the science of land-based curriculum. These students would spend 2 weeks in the winter at our camp about 5 kilometers outside the community, being transported daily by snowmobile, again honoring the cyclical nature of the community. And we did the same in the spring at another camp in the opposite direction. In grade 4, we began to bring our students out for multi-day trips on the land where they camped out. The students would spend a week every year out on the river with elders, hearing the stories about where they came from. The elders were sent out with the instruction that they needed to tell the stories that grounded our students in place. And they needed to live by the rhythms of the spring. If hunters wanted to get up at 4 or 5 in the morning to go out, they needed to bring the kids. We did this in August for our grade 5-6 class, and in June for our 4-5 class. We also sent them to a winter camp about 20 kilometers downriver from the community, camping in minus 20 to 30 degrees Celsius weather, setting traps, setting nets, learning basic survival skills. And in the spring, they spent a week or 2 at the spring camp down the opposite direction. In our junior high program, we had our young men participate in a rites of passage camp, then go out on a moose hunt. Our young women then had their rites of passage camp and were ready to fix and prepare any moose that were harvested. With a successful moose hunt, the class would be drummed back into the community and then the meat distributed to community members. In the winter, they also spent a week down at Horn River setting traps and nets, spending time with skilled community members. If I'm going too fast, please let me know.
So sorry, Ms. Phillip, you can add more, perhaps during the question and answer period, but I have to move on to the other witnesses. At this point, they were given the opportunity to participate in some of the longer programs. When our kids reached junior high, we would send them out on a Friday and bring them back the following Sunday, so we knew that they had 2 safe weekends, that they were safe and they were out learning. In our high school program, we offered experiential science courses that were on the land from anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks. These were usually done in August and September. We'd also organize multi-day canoe trips, wilderness first aid courses, firearm safety courses, and canoe trip certification. Oh, so I'm so sorry, Ms. Phillip, I'm going to have to cut you off.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, that's good.
We'll go now to David Rattray by video conference for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm a Teltan elder, teacher, principal, district principal, counselor, and cultural teacher. And I'm just going to talk about a couple of really topics that we don't like talking about. I've worked with over 1,000, 2,000 Aboriginal Indigenous kids, and from their perspective, they have 4 things that they believe contribute to their failing. The first is pain at home. The second is choosing friends who are hurting. The third is school system who doesn't know how to deal with them. And the fourth is they give up hope on themselves. From my perspective, there are two critical issues that must be addressed at the school level if we are to improve education for Indigenous students. The first is, as Indigenous people, we must break our code of silence, acknowledging the huge impact intergenerational trauma has on many of our community members. Today, we hurt each other's way more than anybody else does, and this is something we don't even like to talk about, let alone address. The second issue is the school system doesn't know how to prepare Indigenous youth to be emotionally ready to learn. They don't understand this intergenerational trauma and its impact. There was a study done back in the late 90s, the ACE study, Adverse Childhood Experiences. This study looked at the relationship between 10 different adverse childhood experiences and their impact upon health later in life. Some of them are included around abuse, neglect, witnessing domestic violence, incarceration, addictions, and so on. And if a child experiences 4 or more of these adverse childhood experiences, they are 32 times more likely to have learning and behavioral problems in school. 32 times more. As a counselor and as a teacher, I've worked with numerous Indigenous students who had 7 or more of these. And so this intergenerational trauma shapes the lives of many, not all, Indigenous students, and it needs to be addressed by the Indigenous leaders and the various levels of the educational and political systems. We watch about suicides, drugs, alcohol, anger, violence. These are all surface symptoms of this intergenerational trauma that we do not like to talk about. I taught in Telegraph Creek, which is from my nation where my mother was from, northwestern British Columbia. And we created an exciting and successful learning environment for all students. We being the community, the staff, and the students. And from that, I created an Indigenous pedagogy that I call the 4 goals of Indigenous education. Goal number 1, emotional needs and safety. Again, most, not all, Indigenous students live in traumatized homes. Their limbic systems are in a state of alert arousal and can be easily triggered by sensory experiences. For learning to happen, their limbic systems must be calmed down. And one of the ways that I was taught growing up was gentle approaches to trauma. It was beautiful to see. It's a cornerstone. The second one is creating belonging environments where it's a safe place to be for everyone. It's relational, spirit of peace. It's fun. It's family orientated, that type of thing. But when I look at school systems, I see what I call almost belonging environments instead of belonging. And an almost belonging environment is where the teacher is still in control in the traditional sense of the word. A belonging environment shifts and it looks at how do I help this human being succeed? And one of the keys to that is looking for their beauty. When you look for beauty in a human being, it's awesome to watch how they respond. The third goal is, as someone already mentioned, the creation of a culturally rich environment that belongs to the community you're in. But there's another piece to it that I call bicultural education. It's the ability to teach someone to walk in 2 worlds. I can go out, hunt moose on snowshoes that I made, kill a moose, drag it back in, prepare it, tan the hide. I can do all that stuff. But I can also apply for a $300,000 grant and nail it. That's bicultural, walking in both worlds. Once these 3 are done, the 4th one, which is academics, soar because they feel safe, they feel they belong, and academics just take off. And it can be done in the current system. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rattray, and we'll now go to Ms. Bobby Wash from by video conference for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Miigwech Nakurmik Merci. Thank you for the opportunity to share lessons learned from participating First Nations to the Anishinaabeg Nation Education Agreement. I join you today as a result of federal investment in my education, a lifelong First Nation learner. I am an independent accountant, fellow of CPA Ontario, fiscal negotiator for the Anishinaabeg education system, and member of the Thessalon First Nation. The Anishinaabeg Nation Education Agreement is the first self-government agreement in Ontario that came into effect on April 1st, 2018. It involves 23 participating First Nations. They are situated in an area ranging from Aamjiwnaang First Nation on the southern tip of Lake Huron and northwest to Biin-Jitawabik Zoging Anishinaabeg, north of Lake Superior. Participating First Nations operate 13 First Nations schools, 2 secondary and 11 elementary. They also send their students to schools in 21 provincial school boards. Low graduation rates and the outcomes of Indigenous students are a direct result of colonialism and federal legislation and policies aimed at extinguishing Indigenous peoples in Canada. Improving education outcomes for First Nations people requires additional investment to overcome the legacy of racist legislation and policies and to address unique costs of First Nations. Incorporating Indigenous language and culture in learning environments is fundamental to improving achievement among First Nations students. This includes daily delivery of Indigenous language classes, immersion programming, and land-based learning. It also involves documenting languages that are almost lost in some communities. Digital exclusion is a significant issue in our communities. Increasingly, broadband internet and accessible technology must be considered fundamental rights. First Nations schools and students require affordable technology and internet access. However, First Nations have marginal access to internet services, and it is cost prohibitive for many families to bring it into their homes. Teachers and school staff are on the front lines witnessing mental health needs of First Nations students. School personnel must be equipped to support the mental health of students in the school environment. They require resources and tools to respond to student needs. The costs to support special education are ever increasing. Participating First Nations of the Anishinaabeg education system report that 45 to 55% of their students require special education accommodations. First Nations are seeing increasing numbers of students with autism and in utero opiate exposure. Federal investment in First Nations special education funding isn't keeping pace with increasing costs, and this must change. Education sectoral self-governing bodies also require additional investment to improve education outcomes. Sufficient governance funding is required to carry out additional responsibilities under self-governing education systems for both participating First Nations and the coordinating of body. It is essential to provide sufficient investment for data governance. Education sectoral self-governing systems must develop and manage data and use it to make decisions for the support and benefit of student achievement. Investment in a long-term longitudinal study is essential to measuring the long-term outcomes of the education system. And finally, education capital is important, particularly for schools, teacherages, transportation vehicles, supporting infrastructure, operations, and maintenance. Without the ability to invest in education capital, First Nations are unable to fully exercise their jurisdiction in education. Miigwech.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bobby Wash. We'll now proceed to our round of questions, beginning with the Conservatives. Mr. Bob Zimmer for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my questions will be for David Rattray. David, welcome to committee. Your list of answers to the questions have been lengthy, and it's been hard to even keep up taking notes, David. But the one thing that I'll say, and it's a little bit because of your gray hair, but a little bit because I used to work with you many years ago, you've been at this a long time. And I used to watch you care for students that were struggling and managed to bridge the gap and have these kids succeed and go on to succeed in their lives. And I know that's the joy of a teacher, but I saw you especially good at what you did. Now, going through your list, there's so much to say, but I'm going to ask you a bit more of a general question. If you were the Minister of Indigenous Affairs, and I know you've done this on a small scale, David, because I see what you do, how would you bring what you said to us, how would you bring that up to the minister and say, if you're the minister in the first 100 days you're the minister, what would you do to change the direction of education for Indigenous communities in Canada? It's a big question.
Nice to start with just a simple question like that. Yeah. The difficulty we're facing is we keep silent about the trauma that we're inflicting on our people because of the intergenerational trauma stuff. So holding forums around trauma and education and community needs, those are the kinds of discussions that need to be held. And there's another piece of it that's really difficult is when someone divulges, we have a culture where we attack the person who has been abused and we protect the abuser. So we've got all of these really powerful structures in our communities where we're out to not deal with the trauma. And so the ability to be open and honest and transparent about, hey, if we're going to help Aboriginal kids, we have to hold talks about intergenerational trauma. Do we have to do it in a rough way, a rude way? No. We can come and say, okay, our kids are hurting. How can we help? How can the school system, how can the political system come to open up this really serious problem? Because it's closed right now. We don't talk about it. On the news, we see about drug, alcohol issues and suicide. That's not the problem. The problem is underneath, and that's the trauma that we're inflicting. So we have to be able to open up dialogues in a gentle way. I'm totally against saying we've got to talk about sexual and spousal abuse and community abuse. That's not the way. We have to come in with talk with the community leaders, and there's two types of leaders in our communities. There's the political leaders, and then there's the unofficial leaders. And how do we get them talking about, hey, your community is hurting, how can we help? And then, for God's sake, help.
Yeah, well, thank you, David. And again, over the years, I watched you, and when we taught together, that you did, and others around you. I remember Bev. And so many kids that we got, we could probably name similar students that we both taught that I still remember that had heaps of promise, you know, in some ways got derailed along the way. But I've also had those students that were challenged during high school come and say, Mr. Zimmer, guess what, I'm a welder now. And you taught me how to weld, and I'm enjoying life. And they're having kids and having families and just really succeeding on that next part of their lives. But I know it's maybe too short of a time to fully develop the answer to what you're saying that we need to do. But I think what you being so honest and upfront with us will hopefully start the conversation in a good way. Maybe I'll ask you this, David, and even breaking it down into a high school as an example, using a high school like we both taught at. How would it look different in a high school there? Would there be extra supports for students? I know it goes beyond that. It goes into families, and it goes much more beyond the four walls of a school. But I guess where would we start?
You'd start at looking at how do you create belonging in schools? How do you create a place where the limbic system, where these kids come to school, they're safe? Yeah. In Telegraph, that's what we did. We found ways to make these kids feel safe, where they belonged, and we did all kinds of stuff which focused on how do we show these kids we care? How do we put the power and responsibility on the community to help? And when you look at it, the community help is critical. Changing the mindsets. When you look for beauty in kids, It's a whole different way of seeing kids. And I can tell you hundreds of stories about finding beauty. Just one quick one. 15-year-old comes in and looks at me. I hate effing counselors. You're going to get kicked out for fighting. Yeah, so? Well, I just want, tell me some fights. Why? I just want to see how good you are. And so he starts to describe fights, and I'm asking, where's this beauty? Where's this beauty? Where's this beauty? And after about 5 or 6 fights, there it is. I see it clear as day. Stop. Every time you fight, when the guy hits the ground, the fight's over. Yeah? Well, you can kick him, you can piss on him, you can do whatever. That's disrespectful. Awesome quality, man. How do we apply that quality before you apply your fists? 20 minutes, he stands up, he walks out, he says, man, you're cool. I'd like to see you again. I'd like to see you. He stopped fighting that day. They were going to kick him out. That whole mind shift of how do you teach? How do you discipline with dignity? How where we're at now, I'm developing Kuugan, which is our old laws, and we're putting them into the school system there. Kuugan is not about right and wrong. It's about restoring balance, restoring friendship, restoring healing. It's not about consequences. And so it's about people working together to develop and take conflict as something to grow, not to consequence. Those are the mindsets. But the whole shift that's necessary is we are not doing service to traumatized kids the way our school system is set up. Therefore, you have to challenge, how do we change that whole approach so that we can find that beauty in these kids, where we can hold them accountable in a gentle way, where they can come, their limbic systems calm down so they feel safe in the school. That's the kind of mindsets that you have to explore.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rattray.
Well
Thanks,
said,
Mrs.
David.
Zimmer. We'll now go to Mr. McLeod for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the presenters today. It's good to see somebody from my hometown. It's not very often we see anybody from the north, never mind my hometown. So I'd like to say welcome to Lois Phillip. And Madam Chair, I'd also ask that Lois present her written submission to us so we can put it into the record. She was just getting warmed up when you cut her off, and she's got lots to say. I've known Lois her whole life, pretty much, and I know Lois in the community of Fort Providence. You've become the go-to person for many people, whether it's students, whether it's parents, grandparents, educators. A lot of people go to seek advice from you or support from you, and it's resulted in a lot of graduations, a lot of high school and post-secondary, and I'm not sure what you're doing that is resulting in these numbers that we need to see. We're still a long ways from where we need to be, but things are going well when you seem to get involved. Is it because we need a navigator program? Do we need people to help the students find their way? Maybe you could just talk about some of the obstacles that you're observing when you're talking to people about education and improving education.
I think the greatest obstacle to moving us forward in terms of education is the division that I see. You know, I look at this room and I assume that opposition is on this side and government is on this side. And that's where it becomes a little bit challenging in terms of how do we move forward in a good way, understanding that it needs to be about developing partnerships. We need to understand that if we were to raise the Indigenous graduation rates and narrow that gap, the economic effect on the Canadian GDP would be in the hundreds of billions of dollars. So if we start with that as the primary understanding of why it is important, we get healthier communities. You know, I look at Fort Providence, and I was blessed because that is my home community. I am a 60 Scoop kid. I'm also a residential Indian day school student. So I carry that understanding. And I'm in a community living with my family is non-Indigenous. So that has made me really aware of the the challenges of walking in both worlds and understanding that I need to be a voice for my community. In the midst of our programming, between 2008 and 2013, our attendance rates were well over 95%. That meant some days I wanted some kids to go home, but they were there. And when you have students that are in the building, learning happens. And when learning happens, we see greater rates of success. The fact that in a community of 800, we had 23 students at 11 different post-secondaries. We had them at Carleton, we had them at Algonquin, we had them at RMC in Ontario. We had them in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and BC. And those kids, those young people come back to the community with an understanding that they can be the change makers. You know, I had the immense pleasure of working last summer with Michael's youngest, and she's a go-getter, and the skills that she possesses are incredible. And I like to think that a lot of it is because of our outdoor programming. By the time our kids graduated grade 12, they had been out on the land for 50 plus weeks. They had spent over one academic year out on the land, whether it's fishing, whether it's moose hunting, whether it's doing Science 30, grade 12 science out on the land. It's incredible. Forget what the question was. I think it's about working together for a common vision and setting aside our differences to understand that as Indigenous peoples, we want success, but it's not always something that is achievable within the present systems.
Just want to quickly interrupt you because I want to get one more question in. You have an opportunity now to make a recommendation to the government. What can the government do better or different that will improve the graduation rates for Indigenous people?
I think language immersion is important to the healing, that David referred to. I think that when you privilege a language in a school, you privilege a systems way of thinking. And I think that's probably the biggest one. I think that also we need to allow schools to develop alternative program as seen to be mainstay. You know, when I left the school, we lost our year-round calendar, we lost a lot of things, and those need to be entrenched in the fabric of what is important, language and alternative programming. And let's redefine the metrics of success. I like the NWT in that we are allowed, or not we're allowed, we fund students up to 21. So we're away from that period of time, K to 12, you should be done, you should be graduated at 18. Well, that's not necessarily achievable in all of our communities, but by 21, it is. I'll see.
Thank you, Mr. McLeod. We'll now go to Madame Gill. Vous avez la parole pour 6.
You have the floor, 6 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to thank all of the witnesses who have come before the committee. I would like to ask a question about successful outcomes, but Ms. Phillip actually got ahead of me, said exactly what I was going to say. I also teach. I teach at the college level. And I remember a conversation I had with one student who said to me, we really focus heavily on performance. You have to perform. You need to do well all the time. Be perfect all the time. Do things quickly. And everyone's competing against one another. That's what this student said to me. It's not what I personally support, but this is something that is a reality within the education system. And it got me wondering, what is success? I think Ms. Phillip has already defined it in a certain way. Do you think that we should redefine the word success? I also think Mr. Rattray touched on this topic, so I'd like to hear from you, both of the witnesses who have already spoken, and as well as Ms. Babawash.
Just You're wanting me to redefine success? Was that the question?
Parce qu'évidemment,
Well, of course, we are studying successful outcomes in our study. So you could give your own definition. You certainly have a lot of experience in teaching. So how should we understand success? Thank you.
When I have kids in my office, I'd often ask their parents to tell me what their gifts were, as a place to understand that the relationship between community and families needed to be integral, and as a starting place. Success is so many different things. You know, if you're a good person, if you have the skills to respond in your community in a good way, those are all the metrics of success that I need. You know, we have students that struggle with literacy and numeracy skills, but what they bring to our community is what we need. You know, we need doctors and we need lawyers and we need healthcare professionals and teachers, but we also need those people that our community members that will take care of us, that will, you know, I think Michael will agree, in Port Providence over the last 8 months, we have experienced some incredible loss. And the beauty of the community is how we come together in that loss and how we acknowledge our losses. And for me, that's success. You know, success is not about graduating at 16, 17, 18, but success is about making sure that you have the skills to be a good person living in both worlds. I don't know if that answers, I don't know if that is something to take away with, but I think as Indigenous peoples, we have the opportunity to lead in so many ways. Merci.
Ms. Bobby Wash, if you'd like to weigh in, or Mr. Rattray.
Thank you. I can actually, it's a really good question. Thank you for asking. The participating First Nations and the Anishinaabe Nation Education Agreement are actually talking about that right now, and what does student success and well-being mean to them as an education system. And within the Anishinaabe Nation, there we have a preamble where we open meetings with, and it's we are all one family is the English translation, and it's Ngotaway Onagizit Anishinaabe, and it really does encompass that concept that we are all here in this one family together, and we all have a purpose in our family. Just like Lois said, we all have different gifts that we can give, and that's really fundamental to success, is just being recognized as part of the family, and that relationship and that open that sense of belonging that David talked about also. And I also wanted to just bring up the word child in Anishinaabe is Benojins. So Benojins Suk is our children, and that actually literally translates to raising the spirit. And that's, I think, really what schools are have a big role in, is raising the spirit of our students and allowing them to flourish and to realize the gifts that they've been given, and to share that with the world and to feel good about it. And David was spot on when he talked about that sense of that trauma that we've experienced, both personally, but also intergenerationally. And if we can lift the spirits of our students so that they feel good about themselves and about their family and about where they are at this point in time with the resources that they have, then I think that to me is the start of success.
Mr. Rattray, if you'd like to add something, you have about 30 seconds.
Okay. Totally agree with what was said. The essence of success for Indigenous students, I believe, is the ability to help them deal with their trauma and to help them understand that they are living in two worlds and how to navigate those two worlds. Thank you.
Merci, Madame Gill. Ms. Idlow, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and all the witnesses who have come to speak to us today, because they are speaking the absolute truth. I'd like to speak in Inuktitut, but the questions I have, I don't know them in Inuktitut, so I'm going to ask them in English.
Much appreciate all of your interventions. You've made it very clear to us that the impacts of colonial policies remain, that our students are still experiencing intergenerational trauma. And I love how you're all trying to make sure that as parliamentarians that we're seeing these realities, and that in order for our students to become healthy, productive adults, we can't only judge it on academic success. That we also have to focus on their well-being, the way that I think First Nations, Métis, and Inuit used to raise our children. We used to raise them to make sure that they have love and kindness and wanting to help protect the environment and the wildlife, that they mattered and that we show respect at all times. And with the residential school system teaching Indigenous peoples anger and pain and abuse to make them to force them to suffer such abuse, it's no wonder that we continue to see the impacts of intergenerational trauma. I still experience it myself. But to ensure that we are moving towards producing healthy, productive Indigenous peoples, I wonder if you agree that maybe we need to be incorporating an education system that talks about love and forgiveness from the Indigenous people's teachings, rather than only trying to ensure that there's academic success. And the reason why love and forgiveness are so important is our parents and our grandparents were robbed of it. And how can they teach of it if they were robbed of it? That's my question. Do we need to talk more about what Indigenous peoples went through, and to try and make sure that we're working towards love and forgiveness in our education system? Maybe if all three could answer, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, I was going to say, go ask someone first. However, I think that needs to be the cornerstone. There needs to be the cornerstone of all Indigenous, all education needs to be the understanding that within First Nations communities, we were born of trauma. Every generation since contact has been born into trauma. So how do we move out of that in a way that is collective, in a way that is built on understanding and without judgment? And this is where we are, and how do we move forward? And, there are many times when I've had students that have needed a nap and a meal. And that's what they needed. They did not need that English test. They did not need that math test. They needed understanding that this is where they were. And if we can respond to needs as they arise in a gentle way without judgment, then we have the ability to move forward. Let's see.
Mr. Rattray?
The whole thing about emotional intelligence is really important. And it has to involve the community, it has to involve the staff, and the whole idea around how do we create how do we help youth who are hurting heal? When we do that, teachers don't have to, in quotes, fix the kid, but we have to create an environment where their pain is accepted. So all the strategies around creating a belonging environment. One day I went to school and I was a teacher and I was really tired. And I said, kids, if you fool around, I'm going to rip your tongues out today. You don't believe me, try me. The second toughest girl I've ever worked with in my life says, oh, David's having a bad day. She came up and gave me the biggest hug you could imagine. All of the girls came up, gave me hugs. Some of the guys hugged me, some gave me 5. How long can you stay upset? I've never seen that in a discipline policy. But these kids intuitively know how to support each other's. We have to create the environment for it to happen. Now,
Thank you. And Ms. Bobby Wash?
Miigwech. So for the Anishinaabe education system was formed really by the First Nations to make sure that their children are not experiencing the traumas that the parents and grandparents have in Indian residential schools. And our mission actually is Nuiji Alman Nigikino Amaganonik Jibim Soed Anishinaabe Wadzuin Gikendaswin Mikana, which translates to we support our students in following Anishinaabe Adzuin learning path, and that Anishinaabe Adzuin is that way of life. And really, it does involve that love and kindness and the respect for each other, not just people, but creation and all the land and the beings that we share Mother Earth with. And that's fundamental to giving the students that sense of that relationship, to be able to then succeed, because once they have that sense of safety, right, then they can achieve anything.
Thank you, Ms. Idlow, and thank you to our witnesses. That will conclude our panel. I just want to thank you so much. You've enriched our study today with your testimony, and any kiddo will be lucky to have you as a teacher. So thank you so much. We're going to briefly suspend as we set up for our second panel.
Miigwech, thank you.
and Michael Furtick, Director of Innovation by video conference, and hopefully Ms. Karen Ristol, Advisory Board Member by video conference shortly. We will begin with Ms. Smith. You'll have 5 minutes for your opening remarks. Thank you very much.
Oh, hello. Sorry, Madam Chair. I was getting some water there. Okay, so so I'm the interim advisor to the president of NWAC, and I just want the honorable committee to know how honored I am to be here. And education is an important issue for the president of NWAC. Closing the gap in education is a top priority for NWAC. Unfortunately, the legacy of residential schools continues to impact our youth. Madam Chair, that is why all services, educational or otherwise, must be trauma-informed. NWAC believes that Indigenous women, girls, transgender, and gender diverse peoples need to be provided the opportunity to control their education. Okay? To do so, investments need to be made to improve facilities and services, while also recognizing the authority of Indigenous people in determining their education. Indigenous peoples are self-determining. So Canada is in the process of implementing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And let us remember that Article 14.1 of the Declaration states, Indigenous people have the right to establish and control their educational systems and institutions providing education in their own languages in a manner appropriate to their cultural methods of teaching and learning. Indigenous education is built on the values and practices informed by Indigenous cultures, languages, and histories. Passing down Indigenous ways of being provides supports and resources to Indigenous youth to reach their full potential. In addition, Madam Chair, we cannot discuss educational rates without discussing Indigenous language revitalization. Indigenous languages contain our worldviews, our cultures, our identities that oftentimes are intersectioning. NWAC believes Indigenous language fluency creates strong cultural connections, which is tied to greater self-esteem, improved health, and better academic outcomes. NWAC has its own action plan in implementing the 231 calls for justice of the final report of the Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Women and Girls, MMIWG. A part of this work will help uplift an educational initiative of the National Inquiry. That initiative is called Their Voices Will Guide Us. It's a resource for educators at all levels to introduce the value of Indigenous women and girls' lives into the classrooms and the minds and hearts of young people. It will prepare educators to use a decolonizing and trauma-informed approach in their teaching. In Canada, education is provided by provincial territorial governments, but for First Nation kids on reserve, education is paid by the federal government. Despite the federal government's funding these programs, First Nations communities are given less money for schools. Structural barriers to assessing education, such as costs, have an immense impact on Indigenous girls. It has been found that Indigenous girls are more likely to attend underfunded schools and that lack the basic resources, leading many to leave their communities to receive an education. These barriers create greater risks of poverty, poor health, and unemployment in the future. Additionally, Madam Chair, Indigenous women also cited personal reasons, i.e. pregnancy and access to childcare, as reasons for dropping out of school. Wrap-around services are essential in this conversation, Madam Chair. Northern Indigenous students often have to travel significant distances from their homes, families, and lands to access education. Indigenous youth who travel south for education often experience ongoing mental, emotional, and financial stress associated with being away from home. In sum, NWAC's research on Indigenous education has found that the most substantial barriers to education are cost and structural constraints, geography, and a sense of pride and connection to their culture. NWAC values Indigenous youth as the leaders of tomorrow with unique voices that must be heard and empowered when leading change. I would like to thank the committee now for undertaking a study to examine the existing funding and governance structure of the education system. It's greatly appreciated. I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smith. And we'll now go to Mr. Furtick for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much to the committee for welcoming Karen and I here to speak with you today about this important topic. My name is Michael Furtick, and I'm the co-founder and director of innovation at Taking It Global, a charity I co-founded in 1999, which operates the Connected North program. I'm based in Toronto, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples. To improve high school graduation rates and successful outcomes for Indigenous students, a focus must be on equitable access to learning resources and opportunities that are inspiring, culturally relevant, and customized to their unique learning goals. Harnessing the power of technology is also an essential component for creating accessible opportunities. Given the challenges of reaching students in some of Canada's most remote and isolated communities, which you've heard from many of the panelists to date, many students lack the access to the educational resources, mental wellness programming, and future pathways guidance readily available to K-12 students in the South. Graduation rates can only be increased if students are inspired and engaged in the classroom from the beginning of their educational experience, and that's the goal of Connected North. A program operated by our registered charity, Taking It Global, Connected North uses a technology-driven, classroom-based approach to connect First Nations, Inuit, and Métis students and teachers living in remote communities across Canada to live, virtual learning experiences and opportunities not available to them locally. Previously, students would have been unlikely to access experiences like post-secondary campus tours, museum visits, hands-on coding programs, and conversations with Indigenous professionals from diverse sectors. Through Connected North, they can now participate from the comfort of their home community. The program started in just one school, but now operates in 150 schools, serving over 30,000 K-12 students and more than 500 active teachers. And during this school year to date, we've delivered over 200,000 minutes of live interactive digital learning. All sessions are customized to meet the unique needs of every school, teacher, and classroom, with a focus on delivery by Indigenous educators, mentors, and role models, such as MP Eidlout, who's recently spoken to students. It looks like Karen's joined us as well. So Karen, I'll give you a minute just to talk a bit about the history of Connected North, if you're there.
Very good. Can everyone hear me? Could I just maybe get some smiles or
I'm so
a bit of
sorry.
sound check? We're good?
We need a proper headset just for our interpreters. I'm wondering if you have the one that was sent.
I have all the approved equipment currently. I ran the test this morning. So I'm featuring a blue Yeti here.
Oh.
As you can see, it's been approved, and I was told I have the proper equipment. I'm ready to proceed.
Let me just confer for 1 second. Okay, we're all good. Thank you so much. Please continue.
Very good. All right, so pleased to be here before the committee. Thanks, Michael, for the introduction. Connected North was created through a collaboration between Cisco Canada and Her Excellency Mary Simon, focusing on her work on the 2011 National Strategy on Inuit Education. The program was launched as an innovative way to harness technology to engage students and provide 21st century digital access to resources to help close the education gap. After a successful pilot project in one school in Iqaluit in 2013-2014 academic year, the program expanded across Canada, which is really exciting. Taking It Global took over operations of the program in late 2015 and has led its rapid growth since then. Cisco and an ecosystem of private sector technology partners remain engaged today to provide and support best-in-class technology solutions. At the heart of the program is the commitment to an approach that holds Indigenous perspectives at the center of both content and process. This is what makes the program very unique. This includes developing culturally relevant content where students' cultures are respected and valued, supporting the work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Sessions are sourced and developed in partnership with teachers and communities in direct response to their needs, and First Nations, Inuit, and Métis role models are involved wherever possible as critical sources of knowledge and inspiration. There are currently over 2,250 sessions available to be booked, which is incredible. Each session has been developed by one of the more than 300 active lesson providers, 132 of whom are Indigenous. And the program offers stipends to all providers, bringing new economic development opportunities to many Indigenous artists, elders, scientists, and a whole host of folks. The interactive sessions held in real time average about 45 minutes in length and cover any topic or subject matter. The most popular subjects are science and environmental studies, arts, and music. And examples include virtual field trips to museums, science centers, galleries, aquariums, teachers and teachers' professional development workshops, training, and sessions that explore future pathways for education and careers featuring Indigenous leaders. We also offer mental wellness programming and resources that are aligned with our well-being framework, and the program is made possible thanks to an excessively large ecosystem of donors and supporters ranging from corporate partners, regional governments, family foundations, and private individuals. So over to you, Mike.
And I know we're nearly out of time, so I'll just say we'd be happy to talk a bit more in the questions about some of the program's outcomes and the impact that it's developed to date. And we're excited to have the government of Nunavut as the first territory to fully fund the program across all of their schools. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll now proceed to our round of questions. We'll begin with Mr. Vidal for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all three of our witnesses today. I appreciate you being here today and sharing your knowledge with us. I'm going to start with Mr. Furtick this afternoon, sorry, wrong part of the day. Start with Mr. Furtick. Mr. Furtick, you have a very impressive resume. I went and did some research, and I'm very impressed with the knowledge and history of the work you've done. And my first question for you is just to have you talk a little bit more about the program delivery itself, just give you an opportunity to explain it a bit more in the context of what kind of requirements are necessary for some of the northern and remote communities to be connected and be able to do what they need to do with your program. So I know you use digital technology. I know it's very much a technology-based application you do. I just want to give you the opportunity to talk about that a little bit more, please.
Sure. I guess the program delivery really begins with a student's interest or the curriculum that a teacher needs to meet. Either of those things, I think, are equally important in really engaging students. And so a teacher will come to our team members. We have almost 20 educators on our team that help to deliver the program. And they'll say, I have a student interested in Shakespeare, or a student that wants to learn about, Indigenous cooking or about science experiments. And we will source an amazing guest speaker to deliver a session to inspire and engage them. I think one of the things that also makes the program special is we will send the supplies and materials to the school to make that happen. So whether that's soapstone for them to do a carving, or our office is full of squid where students will dissect squid to do a science experiment, or books from Indigenous authors. We've sent this year over 800 shipments to our partner schools to make sessions and supplies possible. Obviously, the program requires a sufficient internet connection to exist. And, we've seen in the Auditor General's report this week, there's, still some challenges with many First Nations communities, Inuit and Métis communities too, having adequate access. But we have seen improvements in recent years where more schools are able to participate that weren't able to do it before. But essentially at the heart of the program, it's delivering a learning experience to meet a student's interests. And it's also aligned to over 2,000 curriculum objectives. So we make it easy for teachers to see how what we have to offer in our catalog meets the curriculum.
Thank you for that. People that sit at this table regularly are probably tired of me talking about the concept of outcomes, but in the context of the program, in the context of the work you're doing, do you have some specific data that you could share with the committee? I'd love to get this in the report as to the outcomes you're able to achieve through your program and what you use to measure success I mean, there's different ways to measure success. This is about graduation rates, but it's also about outcomes in general. So if you have some data that you use to measure success and what that looks like, I think the committee would appreciate knowing that, and we'd like to get that in the report.
Thank you. Yeah, so we did have a study commissioned by York University in the early days of Connected North that found 89% of students who participated said that this kind of a live virtual experience made learning more enjoyable. We also survey our teachers as part of the program every single year, And last year, over 200 teachers responded to that survey, and 96.5% of them said that Connect to North helps to do two things. It's increasing students' motivation, and it's contributing to their attendance. And we know those are critical factors to success in graduation. Similar to something like Uber or eBay, at the end of each session, a teacher has an opportunity to give us feedback on a 5-star scale. And this year, we had a 94% teacher satisfaction rating with over 2,000 pieces of feedback to date. So we're very data-driven. We're always analyzing how we can improve. And more importantly, we're also working with those institutions, museums, science centers, aquariums, helping them to improve based on teacher feedback and student feedback so they can improve their virtual learning delivery for every Canadian. Because I think we have a big gap in terms of the preparedness. You know, there's a lot of funding for physical spaces from this government, but there's very little funding for institutions and partners of ours for virtual program delivery and virtual learning.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm going to go off a little bit of I'm going to go a different direction than I was planning when I started today. In our first panel today, we heard one of our presenters talk about, and she talked about how we develop the skills to be a good person. I know as an old hockey coach, that was something that was very important to me. It wasn't just about wins and losses. It was about, do we make quality young people that are going to be contributing members of society when we're done? So I've got about a minute left. I'm just going to give you that minute to talk about how your program is providing the skills to young people so that they end up being good people in our society, in their society, where they live, where we all come together.
Karen, I'll share this moment with you as well, but the one thing I would emphasize is a big part of our well-being framework is hope for the future. And I think exposing students to role models in every field, in any field, giving them that opportunity to realize that they can be anything they want to be and that they see themselves represented in their learning is hugely important for them to be excited and have self-esteem and realize that anything is possible at an early age. Karen, anything you want to add?
Yeah, the one thing that I would add is that this leverages technology to provide an experience to students. And when you think about Indigenous ways of learning, it really is truly at the core experiential. And I'm not talking about just kids, I'm talking just generally. Indigenous ways of transferring knowledge is through experiences where kids get to be interactive with their environment, with the folks that they're engaging with. And so when you think about this program, particularly in a, dare I say it, post-pandemic era, it's really pushed the world to a place where we can leverage technology, changes, advancements in technology to provide more experiences to children so that they can learn in a way in which aligns best with their culture and their ideology and give them a stronger sense of pride in who they are, where they come from, but more importantly, that they have opportunities that are accessible through to them through these technologies and programs.
Thank you. And if you have anything further you want to add in writing, I know we're out of time. If you have something else to submit, we would appreciate any kind of further data in writing that you would offer to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madame Gill?
Oui, merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to introduce a point of order. Just based on the devices being used, I'm concerned about the interpreters. It doesn't look like our colleague has a House-approved headset. I also note that sound checks were not carried out before the first panel. I just want to make sure that we do things right in the future because it's not okay when we interrupt witnesses.
Thank you, Madam Gill. So just conferring with the clerk that we have the okay from interpreters and that it was a tested device and it has been approved. So hopefully we're okay to proceed. Thank you. And we'll now turn to Mr. Aldag for 6 minutes.
Je m'excuse, Madame la Présidente.
Sorry, Madam Chair. I wasn't asking whether interpreters agree or not. I was asking whether a House-approved device is being used. Those are separate issues. Is our witness using a House-approved device?
Yes, it is House-approved.
D'accord. Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Understood. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Aldag for 6 minutes.
Great, thank you. And welcome to our witnesses. Thank you for your opening comments. I'm still somewhat new to this committee. This is my second week of being here. And so I'm still understanding the premises of this study. But when I go back to the terms of reference or the motion, that was introduced, we talk about gaps in attainment levels between Indigenous students and others. And so I'm assuming that the premise is that Indigenous persons or students have a lower graduation rate. And I'm wondering, I'm going to direct my questions initially to Ms. Smith. I'm also wondering if, we often see female students further disadvantaged for a number of reasons. Do you know if those attainment levels, if there's a gender difference within Indigenous women or girls and males? And if that's the case, if that premise is the case, do you have any sense of what factors may be exacerbating that or causing that? And once we start understand if that's actually the premise, if that's true, then we can look at how do we start addressing that gender inequality. So I'll start off with, is there actually a difference that you're aware of, and any information you would have on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. I am aware of the gender disparity, but I don't have the stats before me. I can follow up, though. That's a great question with more detailed, and I think that will make other members probably happy, too, to have that sort of data. But I can talk briefly about the reasons why there's a gender disparity, and I think, when we talk about Indigenous education, I can go on about this, but we need to kind of have a shift in what the measure of success is, and a lot of time, and we have to decolonize our way of thinking towards education when it comes to Indigenous peoples. And so when you have a young Indigenous woman or a gender diverse or transgendered, then, well, there's colonial harms such as transphobia, homophobia that is at play, but it's also about the safety of the Indigenous person. So, we need to really talk about that. And I know NWAC has a resource, an online resource called Safe Passage. So even that, you're talking about human rights. Oftentimes women have to, unfortunately, think about their safety, and sometimes that's given more priority than studying for a certain exam and this sort of thing. And then. And also then we have to, you hear me talk about wraparound services. So, oftentimes the formal education, we need to shift the focus away from a traditional service-driven, problem-based approach to care, and instead think of a strengths-based, needs-driven approach. And there's so we have to kind of think about all of a lot of factors in there. I know I'm going around the question, but certainly, yes, there is a disparity, and I spoke a little bit on and why that is, but I can certainly follow up.
Sure, and I have another question and if you may be able to add additional information through a follow-up to this too, but when you talk about safety, I'm thinking that, we also have very different settings. So we have urban settings, which could be Indigenous women off reserve or living in who are residents of an urban community, and that may be one set of challenges. Then there could be female students in remote communities, and looking at what the disparities may be there. And I would think perhaps less safety, living in their own communities with their own families, being schooled with their neighbors and family members and things like that. And then people we've heard having to leave their communities to go to higher levels of education, even high school. And I know I've lived in many communities where we've had students coming from other communities, and I think that when we have young female students, I look at my daughters, in high school, if they had to leave the safety of our home and community and go somewhere else, would that have an effect on those learning outcomes as well? And so again, any kind of thoughts on not only the gender differences, but those geographical differences and kind of the settings where Indigenous women may be having to take their schooling, and again, how do we mitigate against those various things like safety in each of those kind of categories?
I think that's a great question again, and so the final inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women talks a lot about public transportation. That's very much a part of this discussion as well. And we know that when we have Indigenous women in the north, for example, oftentimes that there isn't reliable public transportation, and then that's a security issue. And then, like you said, when people are away from their community, well, now there's a disconnection. I think all of us can agree that all we want is to feel a part of a community, to feel that connection. I love being here in person with you guys right now, and I think you lose a little bit of that. So now we have to shift, have a decolonized way of education. As I said, a part of that is creating emotional intelligence, emotional security, and the well-being of the Indigenous person in question. And so that's why we have to think about wraparound services as well, and make sure that the person is supported. And I think I mentioned their voices will guide us. So that's a resource online available that was put together for educators. Yeah.
I'm just getting the flag from the chair. I think I've hit my time.
Okay.
But yeah, any follow-up information you have that you could submit would be really appreciated.
Okay. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Aldag. Madame Gill, vous avez la parole.
You have the floor, Ms. Gill, 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you to our witnesses. I would like to hear Ms. Smith saying a little bit more about difficulties facing women and young women going through the education system. My colleague, Mr. Aldag, already talked about difficulties linked to geography, for example, rural, on reserve, off reserve. But what I'd like to ask is, where should we target our efforts? How could the federal government ensure that education is equitable, available to both women and men equally?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. And again, so I will mention, and anyone that knows me is probably tired of me talking about this, but again, I can follow up with the committee on something I'm really proud of that NWAC did, and that's called the Culturally Relevant Gender-Based Analysis. And why I bring that up is because in there, it's for policymakers like yourselves to ask hard questions, right? And to ensure that any sort of policy, study, strategy takes into account colonization, that takes a trauma-informed approach. Let's just make up a person who's, transgendered, disabled, and living on reserve. Let's make sure that any sort of educational efforts, any sort of effort when it comes to policy and legislation takes into account that person, and that person's not left behind. Truth and reconciliation is hard work, and it's all of our work. And we have to ask ourselves, I was formally trained in law school. I have to, although I'm an Inuk woman, but I was separated from my culture due to colonialism, and I struggle every day to decolonize my thoughts and not take things for granted. And that's what we all do. Ms. Gill, I really appreciate, Madam Gill, I appreciate your question, and I think, that's a good question. Where should our efforts go? I think, it's oversimplifying it to say that we need to have a decolonizing shift, because what does that mean? And I think, again, I go back to, we need people to understand that it's not just formal education that we have to focus on in the curriculum or the curriculi, but it's those wraparound services that are needed as well for Indigenous women and girls and gender diverse and transgendered people. Also, maybe there needs to be more services in language revitalization. When an Indigenous girl feels proud of who she is, then it's proven that she will attain better educational outcomes. And what I like about, sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. I'm really excited to have this discussion. Their voices will guide us, is a resource I keep referring to. But what I love about it is that at the heart of this is teaching children, non-Indigenous children as well, how valued Indigenous women are. And so when a child has love in their heart and in their minds for Indigenous women and girls, then, they're less prone to violence and other things that may take them off the course of achieving better educational rates. So part of that is also incorporating for Indigenous women and girls into the education. Well, maybe they want to hear from knowledge keepers. Maybe they want to connect with the land and traditional ways of learning. Maybe they want to learn from midwives and healers. And maybe they need positive role models to talk about resiliency. Because we're still here. I know that I've given you a lot of information. I don't know if I answered the question directly, but thank you for that question.
Merci beaucoup, en effet.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smith. And I'm sure we could talk about this subject all day. I know you jumped around a little bit, but that's a perfectly valid way of covering as much as possible. Along that same vein, you talked about women, but you also talked about decolonization. So I'd like to hear from our other witnesses on that topic, decolonization, and the role it plays at your organization. Thank you.
Mike, are you good with me taking this one?
Sure,
Very
go ahead,
good.
Karen, thanks.
Merci, Madame Gill.
Thank you, Ms. Gill.
Of decolonizing, I really think of revitalization. So it's less about deconstructing and more about constructing and revitalizing the ways of learning through experience that are very much aligned with Indigenous ways of doing in terms of learning and development. And your question in and around, the comparator from on reserve to off reserve, I think that generally if you expose children to learning environments into an environment where they can learn about the world around them, the land is the land, the water is the water, and it gives them an opportunity to learn in a way that is familiar to them, in a way that is aligned with them culturally and ideologically. With Connected North, we bring in technology to leverage that experiential learning. And sure, we're not doing it specifically on land and water, and in some cases we are actually, but we're not doing it specifically within that context. We're in classrooms, but we're actually connecting people with teachers with Indigenous teachers, in some cases, who are transferring knowledge in a way that is familiar to the children that we're reaching out to. And so it really goes back to revitalizing the principles of learning and development that are very much aligned with Indigenous worldview. So in a nutshell, again, not about decolonizing, but more about bringing in what we know works, what's been axed out by the Indian Act, but more importantly, that puts these kids back on the path to knowing who they are and where they come from.
Merci, Madame Gill. We'll now proceed to Ms. Idloud for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Lisa, and the other panels that are here by Zoom. I am hearing what you said, and I am liking what I'm hearing because it is very important. My first question is to Lisa. Based on what you've said, which are like music to my ears, because you're saying that we need more culturally based programs in our schools. I was on a trip recently with some of my colleagues to Cambridge Bay and Koglukto. We met with rangers, Canadian rangers, who came to speak to us. We heard from them, and it was what they said had a lot of significance because they were stating what is lacking. And these rangers, because they're indigenous, they know the environment. They survive on the environment, and they help keep our borders secure in Canada. Now, when you're talking about cultural learning, now I wonder if Indigenous, we need more Indigenous leaders. Now, a lot of the teachers that we have in Nunavut come up from the south. Now, there are some teachers, qualified teachers in Nunavut, in Indigenous communities. Perhaps I wonder if rangers can be taken into consideration as teachers as well and utilized. Thank you.
Thank you for that. What you're saying is music to my ears too, because honestly, I hadn't really thought about using rangers and other wildlife knowledge keepers as teachers, and so. And I think that's because I, as I said before, I'm always trying to decolonize my own thoughts. And yes, I think that would be, and that's what we need, that shift to happen now, so that knowledge is passed on. And that's the thing. What is the measure of success for education, right? And a lot of it, and people don't realize, especially for Northern people, is survival on the land. So when Indigenous children learn that, how empowering, that's success. And I think we need to shift and use those resources available to us to pass on those teachings. Absolutely agree with that. I do see there's some shifts happening in legislation, actually, that I think is helpful. For example, the Accessible Canada Act on disability. It used to be that a harm had to happen to a disabled person before something was done. But now with the Accessible Canada Act, it's also called a Barrier-Free Canada Act. But now it's proactive, and we're perceiving harms, and we're trying to get ahead of it so that harm doesn't have to happen first. And I think those sorts of I use that as an example to you policymakers, so that these shifts can happen, and maybe shifting what that measure of success looks like for Indigenous children, that needs to happen now. And I think so. I thank you not only for that question, but for everything you said and suggested, and I'll give that a lot of thought. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. And now I want to ask Connected North and also to thank you, because you seem to be doing a really good job in helping students get their education. What would you like to see more of? Like, do you need more funding? What else do you need to implement programs that would help students to succeed while they're in learning centers and to have successful futures? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. One thing I'll add is that there's some really strong data that also shows that 95% of students who take school trips have higher graduation rates from high school, and 59% have better grades. So I think that speaks to the importance both of the land-based learning that you've heard a lot about from other guests and panelists, and virtual experiences like Connected North. To respond to your question, I would say that what we need is more sustainable, longer-term funding, particularly around digital learning supports for students in schools. There have been some programs here and there, but often, and you've heard this from other panelists in earlier sessions, it can be 1 year of funding at a time, and it's difficult. By the time you get the program up and running, you're preparing to report and close it down. So I think what we really need is multi-year support, and I think we need a recognition of the value of digital learning, not just physical places in terms of students in remote communities, because as we know, virtual learning offers huge opportunities and provides experiences they wouldn't otherwise have be able to access in person. So we'd love to see some more programs and support for that.
If I have time to add to this, I
Actually,
see successful out.
Sorry, there's
we're out of
actually,
time.
there isn't time, but we are going to go to a condensed second round, so perhaps you can add during that time.
Sure.
Okay, so we're going to go
Absolutely,
to Mr. Melillo for 5 minutes.
Very much, Madam Chair. Thank you to everyone for this this great discussion so far. I think it's been very helpful for our committee as we undertake this important study. And one thing that was mentioned during the course of the meeting was around the internet connectivity, and of course a recent Auditor General report that came out highlighting that the government is currently off pace to meet its 2030 goal of bringing affordable, high-quality, high-speed internet to all Canadians. And as of 2021, about 43% of First Nation communities across Canada have access to high-speed, affordable internet, and that number is only 33% in Ontario. So I represent Northwestern Ontario. My riding spans from the Minnesota border to Hudson Bay, and of the 42 First Nations and 9 municipalities that I represent, we know those internet challenges far too well. But to Connected North, to our representatives with Connected North, I'd like to ask you if you can help sort of contextualize that issue for us. The lack of internet obviously would be something that would impact you greatly and your ability to do your role greatly. I'm just wondering if you can help illustrate how big of a challenge that is and how important it is that the government takes steps to bring high-speed internet to every community as quickly as possible.
Thank you very much. And it definitely is something that is top of mind for many of our school partners, but even our presenters. You know, several of the Indigenous role models and experts that deliver programming through Connected North, we've had to fundraise as a charity to fund, satellite connectivity for them because they didn't have good enough access and they weren't able to deliver to their own communities. So we've definitely seen that firsthand. We've heard that from students as well, especially in Nunavut in particular, where it's satellite only and extremely, extremely expensive. So although there have been, big announcements and a lot of funding announced, we still have heard many stories of that not yet reaching many of the communities we serve and many of the individual students and the presenters. So it does still pose a huge and urgent challenge, given how essential it is for both learning and innovation. Access to that technology to be able to innovate and create, whether it's the next Shopify or an amazing cultural production or a virtual reality experience. Karen and I co-founded a website called Who's.land, which helps people learn about First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities, and with over 2 million page views, helping communities produce content about themselves. They're not able to do that because of that lack of connectivity. So, Karen, I know you had something else to add to that, but it's definitely an urgent challenge that we hear about every day from our partner communities.
Yeah, the one nuance that I'd like to add in terms of what constitutes a successful outcome, and I think we all have our own ideals of what constitutes success that we impose on youth today generally, but especially around when speaking of Indigenous youth. And the way I'd encourage you all to see it is success is really providing the right framework, the right opportunities, equal opportunities for children to be able to engage in learning and development, and then have them grow up and honor the gifts that they carry. And when I say gifts, I'm talking about skills that they naturally have, that they've been given the opportunity to develop them over time, the right teachers, the right coaches, access to them, using technology as we do at Connected North. And whether it be a lawyer or becoming a mechanic or even a member of parliament, It's important that we provide opportunities, various and varied and diverse opportunities to those kids. And at Connected North, that's what we aim to do, is we aim to level the playing field with technology and give equal opportunity to kids to seek out coaching, mentorship, to be inspired by a variety of teachers and leaders across the country, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, so that they can, see themselves in the world out there, in and around them, and position themselves to also, achieve their goals and, most importantly, achieve their dreams.
And not just be consumers, but be creators.
Right. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for that context. And Michael, just very quickly, I don't have much time left, but you mentioned, you alluded to the funding and the announcements that have been made. And could you maybe help identify, I know it's maybe a bit outside of your wheelhouse, but could you perhaps identify maybe where those gaps are between the announcements and the funding and the actual outcomes, to use Gary's word, and the results on the ground when it comes to internet connectivity?
Yeah, just quickly, I think what we've heard for people is the options that are becoming accessible to them are still far too expensive, double, triple the price in the South. And Deloitte did a great report on digital equity recently. And one of the things I suggested was maybe, a direct subsidy to consumers, recognizing that they're, paying double, triple rates. So it's really just that as these solutions come into being, they're much more expensive than they are in the South. They're not yet anywhere close to price parity, at least in the communities we've heard from.
Thank you.
Mr. Weiler for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and also thank you to the witnesses for being here today and the really interesting discussion that we've been having already here. I want to pick up on some questions, a couple for Connected North. So much as part of this study and actually previous study we just completed on Indigenous languages, we really have looked at the dislocation for Indigenous peoples to the land and to language as such damaging things that happen as a result of residential schools, and really fundamental to moving ahead and creating a better future. And I was really quite fascinated with your approach on experiential learning that you've been undertaking, as well as on language as well. And so I was hoping you can maybe just speak a little bit more to the practicalities of how you're doing what you're doing. And in particular, when we're talking about experiential learning and connecting people to the land, when you are doing that in a remote way, how are you able to do that? How are your students connecting in that sense, and are they able to then kind of mimic what the teachings are in the place that they are doing that?
Thanks. That's a great question, and we are really lucky to have a long-term partnership from Cisco, who founded the program in one school with a pilot. But to date, they've donated almost $10 million of technology, enterprise-class technology that is usually used in corporate boardrooms, not in classrooms, so that students are able to have that kind of enterprise class, high quality WebEx-based solution. So a part of it is the technology in the classroom, but then for the presenters, for the people who are delivering those sessions, could be on the land. We've been able to have some funding through the Supports for Student Learning program, where we're able to provide those presenters with those bandwidth grants I talked about, but also with devices. It could be an iPad, it could be a tablet computer, where they can actually be, in the environment, in the field, whether that's, doing a science experiment, or whether that's out, talking to students about traditional medicines, where they can do that streaming everywhere. And there's a lot of sessions that still aren't possible in those environments, but, working with Polar Bears International on the tundra in northern Manitoba out of Churchill, from the tundra, talking about polar bear research and climate change. So there's a lot of opportunities that are becoming possible, and particularly around language revitalization. We work with Rainy River District School Board in Northern Ontario, and they actually use Connected North to deliver language instruction, because some of the schools don't have access to Ojibwe teachers, but through Connected North sessions, they're able to have a teacher in a school that does have that teacher help to fill that gap and support language learning. We've also worked with students in 5 communities to date, publish Indigenous language children's books, thanks to Amazon's Kindle Direct Publishing here in Canada. So also looking at creative ways that we can bring those language resources to life and help students and communities create them where relevant and possible.
That's really great to hear. And one of the other applications I kind of see of it is also in urban settings as well, where you have sometimes, in Indigenous peoples that have, moved there from their traditional territories. And I'm wondering if you've been able to look at how to kind of recreate that connection and provide services like connection to the language and teachings of that nation, while people are not able to necessarily be in their traditional territory where they would be able to perhaps see and talk and do the same things with other people from their nation.
We have done a little bit of that. We do serve Wandering Spirit School here in Toronto, where there are a number of students and they're able to connect in an urban environment with remote communities and have a bit of cultural exchange. But we also launched a program called Fireside Chats, where we've now interviewed over 300 First Nations, Inuit, and Métis professionals, knowledge keepers, experts, artists, authors, and they share their story on an on-demand basis. We have an Indigenous journalist who's written their stories and illustrated them. So we're also looking at creating more on-demand resources that can serve every student, because our focus with Connected North is remote communities, but we've heard a lot of demand, as you said, from urban communities. And so we've created several programs and resources, Fireside Chats, Create to Learn, and Your Voice is Power, to try to provide some resources to those urban communities as well.
That's great. Maybe just last question. I was hoping you'd maybe just speak to the importance of role models in the programming that you offer, and just speak to the importance of that, please.
Thanks. Yeah, I know we heard that in a previous panelist as well, and that's what the Fireside Chats program is all about. You know, students seeing themselves in their learning, identifying those role models, and making those accessible and available in the classroom. So that's been a huge part of the program in ensuring that the students can see themselves represented in their learning. And we're also working at building a network of post-secondary students, you know, who are going into these programs through Indigenous support staff at those colleges and universities, so that they can help students see that pathway and follow in their footsteps.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Weiler. Madame Gill, 2 minutes et demi.
Ms. Gill, 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Another question for you, Ms. Smith. At a few points, you brought up their voices will guide us. Could you tell us a little bit more about it? And I know you've already touched on it, but could you talk about why it's so important for you?
You. Yes, I keep bringing it up, and NWAC, we have our own action plan to implement the calls for justice, and promoting it is one of them. But I do truly believe in the resource. It offers a pedagogy that's different, that I haven't seen another resource like it, and that's why I just want educators to know it's out there. And it kind of is. It's a resource, so you can find the level or the age of the child that you're teaching, and go directly to that source. And also, but it's very enlightening in terms of how it talks about the Indigenous woman. And how colonialism, you know, really affected the value in the minds of people and their role. And it talks about the stereotypes that came from colonialism and this sort of thing. It talks about, it gives the truth of how valuable Indigenous women are. And so it talks about the roles of Indigenous women in the fur trade. And so it's a very valuable resource. And I think I touched upon, it talks about, midwives and healers and this sort of thing. It's not something that we see in traditional formal educational pedagogies. And I keep, there's this message of truth, but also resilience. And that's so important for Indigenous women, gender diverse, transgendered people to feel. But it also, part of the education also is how to remain safe as Indigenous woman navigating the world. And so that's so important too. That's a key piece to this discussion as well. So it's online. I can't speak about it enough, because it really does give you a sense of what is needed for Indigenous girls, women, gender diverse people to succeed.
Merci, Madame Gill. Ms. Idlow for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank my translators, my interpreters, because I am able to speak in my Indigenous language, my first language. And I also thank the staff here because they let me speak Inuktitut. Now, if being able to speak our language, our mother tongue, is a source, is another example of our strength. I just want to show my interpreter how much I appreciate her. Now, do you recall my question from earlier, or do you still have the response that you wanted to give to my question earlier? Thank you.
I believe it's directed to Ms. Restool.
Sorry, I think I got lost in the translation. Could you please repeat the question?
My first question was because you do a really good job through Connected North. My question was, how can we help for those of us who are in the parliament, members of parliament? How can we help Connected North to expand or to help run more successfully? Do you have any needs to be met? Thank you.
Very good. I'll start off the answer and then I'll turn to Michael for the hard data there. But it seems to be that the current government has funded, technological advancements, but they haven't necessarily been put in the right places, and also the quality of the service provided through the technology that they've invested in isn't of high enough standard to facilitate learning and development in our communities up north. And that's a huge miss. And I understand that, while we're making efforts, we may not see everyone, but, to me, it really is about results. And it's one thing to fund big, lofty programs, but we have to make sure that they work and that they reach the people that they're intended to serve. But more importantly, that we can use these tools, this technology, the connectivity, to be able to work together towards achieving outcomes and results for, in this case, Indigenous youth. So I'll turn it over to Mike.
Yeah,
Actually, Mr. Furtick,
that,
I'm so sorry, we're out of time. If you would be able to submit that to our committee, we would appreciate the data for sure.
Sure.
So thank you so much to our witnesses for joining us today. We're going to briefly suspend as we switch to in-camera. Thank you so much.